Yeah, and the Ravens, by the way, could be a tough team to beat right now. They just beat the dog shit out of the Dallas Cowboys without a wide receiver named Dez Bryant, who got pulled in the middle of warm-ups against his former team after being forced to take a COVID test, and that COVID test coming back positive, ripping him off the field after he'd already warmed up a little bit and dapped up the entire Dallas Cowboys roster, telling him he cannot play, it is a danger. Turns out those were probably that was probably a false positive, so Dez Bryant most likely got screwed in his redemption game against the Dallas Cowboys by science of some sort. But hey, happy he survived.
Yeah,
happy he survived. You can see how he'd be incredibly pissed immediately upon that positive, telling him he can't play, and him going, I just tested negative literally 8 hours ago. How could have? Sorry, you can't play. Can we take another test? Well, I won't get back till tomorrow. You motherfucker. You could see how he would say, you know what, I'm going to call it a quit. That's what he actually did. These motherfuckers, I can't do this. Because that was probably a pretty big passion game for him. But they didn't even have Dez Bryant on the field. And not that he's like a X factor, although he is, and that is his thing, is the X. But he was starting to get more reps, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
He was starting to get more balls. I believe Marquise Brown was probably pretty happy that he's on the field for him. It's just interesting situation. But you're right. If the Brownies beat the Ravens, whole different conversation. Dez Bryant, false positive in warm-ups, playing against the Cowboys. Assume now this is all coming out from his Twitter account, so we don't know everything like that. Have all players been tested in warm-ups? Is this a normal thing? Because whenever everybody heard that he got pulled after getting tested in warm-ups after dapping up everybody, I think everybody's initial reaction was like, oh, it was a positive test. But mine was, oh, they're testing people in warm-ups too. Is this been a normal move? Why did he get tested? And could you see why and how he would be so pissed off about how this whole thing unfolded?
Absolutely understand the emotion for Dez, especially because it's the game against the Cowboys. I mean, this is one of the reasons he came back, was to have that opportunity to play against Dallas. There's some misconceptions here. First off, I would say, and I'm not disputing what Dez tweeted a short time ago, but I would say there's a procedure that they go through. They continue to test every day. I would hesitate to say it's a false positive yet, because there's still a process that's playing out. But here's what actually happened.
Okay, that's some interesting news. That's some breaking news.
There are not pregame warm-up tests. That's not a thing. With the Ravens, so every team is tested every day. When you get your test results back depends in part, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but it's true, on your proximity to the lab. A lot of teams get back their results either late at night. Some teams get them back at like 3, 4 in the morning the next day. The Ravens are so close to the lab, which is either in New Jersey or Philadelphia, I can't remember, but they're relatively close. So their samples get there and are run in batches, and they oftentimes know sooner than other teams. So where there are other teams where if they had a player test positive, or in Dez's case it was an inconclusive, they may not have known till the next day. Then you would have had a player participate in the game, find out the next morning that you had an issue, and then you would go through this same confirmation procedure. So what happened with Dez was it was about 2 hours before kickoff that they get back this inconclusive test. So at that point, several things happen. You rerun the original sample. You do a new POC, a point-of-care test, which are the rapid result ones, and then you do a new PCR test. And if the rerun and or the POC come back as positive, you're treated as positive and you're pulled. So the rerun was also inconclusive. They pulled Dez off the field, gave him a point-of-care test. That's the one that came back positive, and that's why Dez was not allowed to play in the game. So then they did go through the contact tracing procedures, which involves doing an interview with Dez, doing an interview with anyone who he may have been near or people who may have had an understanding of what he had been doing through the course of the day, who you had been around. And remember, the NFL, NFLPA protocols are designed that if you follow them, the masking, the social distancing and all that, you shouldn't have anyone who's considered a high-risk close contact. With the Broncos, it was they all took off their masks for 10, 20 minutes in a meeting. I know that there were, these Zapruder type of photos of Dez hugging one of his former teammates during warmups. That alone, I understand the optics of it, but that alone doesn't make you a high-risk close contact. Now, if they stood there afterward and talked for 10 minutes and had their masks off, that other player probably would have been pulled out of the game. A hug itself is not going to get you put into that protocol, and that's based upon their medical understanding of the virus and how it's transmitted. It's based on duration. It's based on where it occurs. Was it outdoors or was it in a car?
So what you guys are saying, what the NFL is saying is if our friend Boston Connor here, who has a light up Christmas sweater on.
This is the best I've ever seen Connor dressed.
Whoa! Thank you, Tom. Thank you.
He looks
Thank
good.
you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. So the thing about
Like an adult.
Thank you.
Tom, the thing about it is, he was so close to being like a real adult, though. The hat he chose to wear is the only one he has that doesn't match the sweater, though. Like, he has two Patriots hats right in front of him that he could have just had like a full, like a whole thing. And he said, no.
But that's more adult. You don't want a double letter. You don't want to have logo on the hat and on the jersey.
You Tom.
Mix it up.
Yeah.
You have other things in the closet. I get with him on Connor's side today. First time
I
for
like
everything.
Pelissero a lot.
Pelissero.
Pelissero stinks, but Pelissero's awesome.
Okay, so if let's say our friend Boston Connor here does have the COVID or whatever, you and I can do a DAP.
Okay.
Oh, we can do a DAP. It can
Hell
be
yeah.
quick because the thing about COVID that the NFL is telling us is that thing is a little bit of a slow moving song.
Yeah, like the 5-second rule.
Yeah, he's got to feel the vibes a little bit.
Like
Through
Mahomes and
respiratory
Gilmore.
droplets. It's not through sweat.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
you probably shouldn't go around hugging everyone.
No, no, if he just
so
well, Dez
a
did.
conversation after.
So those point of care ones, those POC ones, I think they only have like 90-95%, right? If the tester
They're
that
less accurate than the PCR test. That's right. Although this is a new one that supposedly is more accurate, can detect the virus sooner.
yeah, but nobody knows anything. Well, they do, and we hope everybody survives. That's all. But I can see how Dez is very upset about this whole thing. It wasn't 2 hours before kickoff, says Dez. He quoted our, okay, so Dez Bryant has answered Tom Pelissero. So, by the way, Tom Pelissero might have been getting a call from Dez Bryant right there. So remember what Tom Pelissero told us. Tom Pelissero said that they get the responses back from their PCR test because they're closer to the Jersey lab that a lot of people are using. So normally the test the day of the game in the morning wouldn't come until the night or the next morning for some teams because they're far away. But since Baltimore is so close to the Jersey lab, they got the response back. Then he went on to say that if it comes back as inconclusive, they would do a POC, which is a point of care test, and another PCR test. If the point of care test, which is a 20-minute response time, which is by all accounts a 90 to 95% accuracy, which is lower than the PCR that's supposed to be 98 or 99% accurate on whether or not you have COVID. If the point of care test that they gave to him after learning of the inconclusive morning PCR test, that came back as positive, I believe, and the other PCR test, the rerun of the morning test also came back inconclusive, is what Tom Pelissero said. Right? Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like he got pulled out of warm-ups, just randomly picked, given a test. He failed it. He now is kicked out of the game. This was an entire series of events that led to this, says Tom Pelissero. Dez Bryant responds and says, it wasn't 2 hours before kickoff. If it was 2 hours before kickoff, I shouldn't have been able to walk in the stadium. We have to be there 2 hours before the kickoff, Tom.
Ooh. Does make sense.
Does make sense because that is the cutoff time for most teams is you have to be there 2 hours before the game. Guys come earlier, but that's normally like the cutoff for everybody. So who knows how this whole thing played out. I would assume the series that Tom laid out was probably near accurate, and I would assume that just the timing is a bit different because Dez talking to other guys on the field, you start doing the hours of when he would have been already at the facility and on the field beforehand, warm-up wise. I don't know, it's interesting. You can see why Dez would be pissed off, though. Not happy about it.
No.
Not happy about
Rightfully
it.
so.
He just quit. I mean, if he's not busy, he should come on and clear everything up with us if he really wants to get the word out there on his experience.
And by the way, did he quit? What's going on?
He basically said he did it on Twitter.
I saw Ryan Clark say, you earn these reps, and it's real. Like, hey, Dez, you worked your ass off to get back here now, right? And I think that's something I think a lot of people, probably friends of his, would be like, don't quit. Now, granted, when I saw that he said he quit, I retweeted it because that was an incredible tweet.
Yeah.
I knew that tweet was going to go massive or whatever. And then he says, yes, I'm coming back. I'm being smart. Okay, good. All right. It was just, in the middle of the moment. And I would assume as that tweet was going, he was like, I'm not going to quit. He probably had to tell people, by the way.
Yeah.
But the tweet was going so big, he was like, I'm also not I mean, this thing's already at 10,000 retweets.
Yeah.
This thing is going to go. That was just a good tweet. It
He
was,
just had some wine, calmed down a little bit. He's back.
he's a wine guy?
Well, that's what he tweeted, I believe, later in the night was that he was going to have some wine. And
White, red wine? What do you think it
I-
I
was?
think he used the red emoji.
He did.
How come everybody gets into the wine? It feels like a lot of people get into the wine. I was just assume it's like the sophisticated blackout where they're like, we're sophisticated here. We're drinking out of these weird glasses as opposed to the bottles and bags used to drink out. You know what I mean? It's an interesting thing. I've never really got into wine, but there's people that love it.
oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
The antioxidants in it. Yeah.
I had a big glass of wine last night.
Really? Red,
Yeah,
white,
red.
red. And do you do the thing to check the legs and all that?
No, not really. And I also forgot that this wine glass was like basically 65 ounces. It kind of got carried away a little bit, to be honest.
So you drank a bottle last night?
Yeah, they are big.
Yeah.
Those
Well,
wine
that's
glasses.
because they're supposed to be, so you can do all the shit.